And we will send out today's recording and slides to everyone who's registered here. We do want this to be interactive, and we're really interested in your questions, and we will be reading your comments. And if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put the questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we will make sure that we respond to those, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd love to. Thanks so much, Katie. And thank you all for choosing to spend a little time with us this afternoon to hear about curricular analytics. I will share that this is something I was joking about before we started up, that we really do love this stuff. We really think it's pretty innovative and neat, and so we're thrilled to be able to share it with you and hopefully hear your thoughts on how this might align with your institution's goals related to student success. I've been with the Gardner Institute now about 6 years. Prior to that, I served in academic affairs at Brevard College. Before that, I ran their theater program. And before that, I was at Midwestern State University. But here at the Gardner Institute, I work on a lot of different processes, including our larger transformation work, which encompasses everything we do, curricular analytics, innovation work related to chief academic officers, and a few other things here and there. But a lot of the work is tied together with the use of improvement science, which is something that Rob and I both share a passion for. We both studied in our doctorates about how to use improvement science to advance student success in higher ed. So we're thrilled to be able to share some of that with you today via the curricular analytics. I will pass the mic to Rob to introduce himself. Good old Rob.
Hey there. Thank you. I am Rob Rodier. I'm the Associate Vice President for Technology, Informatics, and Data Security, which is a collection of titles that I've gathered along the way because I have been in academics for a while. And while we are a nonprofit that is a group of academics, basically. And I've been working with the folks who created this tool for a while. And they are both they are engineers who came out of the University of New Mexico. And we met when they started creating this and got really excited. It took a while to figure out how to incorporate it into what the Gardner Institute does. Not that it didn't make sense. It was just, how do we get it in here? So that's me. And I also I love working with the folks who created this, the data that it collects. Normally I work with sort of the student level side, of the student level data side, institutional researchers and people like that. But also this was like a way to get at the program structures without having to involve like the whole data side of an institution, because we wanted to visualize it and keep it simple so that you could easily grab a catalog of somebody you look up to or somebody that you think is your peer and sort of do a comparison. And that's what this tool lets you do really easily. So with that, let me jump into the slide deck. So this article was written, I don't know, like
21.
Yeah. Okay. So during the pandemic, so it's been almost 5 years or 4 years ago. And what it sort of brings together out of all of this is the work from Greg Howman and Shawi Abdullah and their team at University of New Mexico, is that curricular design is also, it isn't about the faculty or the institution. It's more about just sort of a systemic barrier that's created because of the way programs and courses are put together. And it's not about a particular person or thing, or even just a particular policy. It's about the system that's there, and it gives you an easy visualization to sort of analyze it or begin to analyze it without having to grab a napkin and scratch it out. And it also lets you look at this as a way, to, consider where are some leverages for change, where are some doing some of the, Brandon is going to get into the 4 different areas of metrics and how those can sort of help you decide where is the lever for change for what we want to address here? Um, and and then this is also, as someone pointed out, but data-driven change strategies. This does help you jump right in with some data, you know, and then start to look at what other data-driven strategies can I use to address change. So I highly recommend the article, but also it gives a good excuse to like give you a background to what we're going to be talking about today. Right. So the Academy is it's a group of like-minded people that want to jump in and look at their programs. They will be from the social sciences as well as the hard sciences, but regardless of where you're coming from, there are going to be other folks there from your discipline or similar disciplines, so you can have some conversations. And we're going to look at both curricular analytics, which is what we sort of start with, and also some improvement science tools that we've used to develop a guide to analyze this and identify opportunities for you to do some curricular redesign, or even just start looking at like, where can I try something right now? The initial period is about 7 synchronous meetings. And then the rest of the year are periodic meetings where we'll get together and do some talking either through discipline specific type groupings or some additional institution, group rooms, as well as sharing of your successes and challenges along the way to see what works. As Brandon shared, we love doing this. So there is ongoing technical practice-based support, encouragement, anything you need from Brandon and me and Steph. There are 7 synchronous meetings, but depending on your needs, we're happy to meet with you 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I'm not saying that because I don't have any, nobody else. But if this we feel is important and helpful, and if we can get you into the tool and learn how to use it, we think that's what this is for. And then you can run with it to do a lot of different things. And Brandon will also be sharing some of the successes of other institutions later on. Access to the platform. There are 2 different platforms. One is really about looking at this curricular analytics. So those metrics. And then there's a learning management system where we provide additional resources and tools in there to help you with this. Your access is for the entire year to the curricular analytics tool. So you can add as many as you want. So you may start with 1 or 2 committees or groups of programs that you want to analyze, but you can put as many as you want in here. There's no limit. Brandon, if you want to add anything or just, okay. So the approach, this is sort of laying out how those 7 meetings are going to go, where we're going to talk about both the curricular analytics tools as well as the improvement science tools. Up front, it's about how do you get in and start using that curricular analytics tool. So that's the orientation and discussion of uploading data, reflection on looking at those factors in course complexity. But then we start using those improvement science tools so you can go from, okay, now that I understand what I'm looking at, how do I drive change and make this better and improve student success? So that's where the problem identification is. And, how do you pick a driver for change? Where's the cycle so that you can start to drive these improvement? Because we want you to select something, decide on a measurement so that when you start making change, am I making a change that's going in the right direction? Or do I need to make some adjustments? And then we in the last meeting, it's where we ask you to come back and show off the work that you've been doing. So presentation of your artifacts and either your plan forward or what you've been doing and how you you plan to scale it or do more.
Great. So before I jump into these slides, I want to pause for a second because this is a lot of information, and curricular analytics is one of those things that we joke that it's kind of like the Matrix. Like it looks like little green dots and these little circles we sometimes refer to as spaghetti and meatballs. And over time, the more time you spend with these, the more your team is going to very quickly be able to recognize where challenges exist within curricular structures. But I'm going to take even a bigger step back and start with why would somebody be interested in this approach and in this work? And typically, when we're thinking about student success, we look at lagging indicators like retention, graduation rates, success within programs of study. And so there are four key metrics that have been sort of typically used to help institutions decide whether or not curricular analytics might be a tool to bring to bear in a program of study. Um, and they are as follows. If you have programs where retention rates are an issue, if you have programs where graduation rate are lower than you'd like, or when you've got a program that has extended time to graduation, so it's taking longer than 4 years to graduate, or students graduating from that program have a lot of additional credits at graduation, that program is probably very ripe for this process. I'll talk a little bit more about some other use cases that we have developed over time, but this, when you're reading, articles about curricular analytics, this is the use case. Individual programs of study trying to address the structural challenges of the current way that the course and the degree is structured. And essentially that this visualization you have on the right, and I'll dig into one much more deeply in just a minute in the actual workspace. But those are the graphs that are produced. And they're significant because our curriculum are rarely visualized in a way that show the relationships between courses, specifically prerequisite relationships. And the impact of those prerequisite chains, which is what that visualization shows, on essentially throughput through a program of study. And so being able to analyze using a handful of tools that we have, inquiry guides, and the curricular analytics tools, it can really make a difference in helping your team see where the opportunities lie. So as Rob mentioned, improvement science, we're interested in saying this is the problem we're trying to solve. These are the causes, and actually embrace that complexity and start to deal with individual root causes associated with student success in these courses. So there are lots of different directions that it can go. But in the initial step of the curricular analytics, these are the four factors that create the numbers that are generated for something like curricular complexity, right? So that you can see here, hopefully you can read that for this program, this computer engineering, the overall complexity is 222. This is neither good nor bad.
Yeah,
Curricular complexity is correlated with your current outputs in your system. So whatever it is, in an ideal world, if you can reduce, or we like to say address that curricular complexity, you'll see an increase in student success. So the blocking factor, um, I'm actually going to dive into the tool and show you live.
while you're doing that, Brandon,
Yeah,
I
go
just
for
want
it.
to highlight what you said
Hmm.
because a complexity factor is neither good nor bad, but it does highlight and give you an answer as to like what else might be going on as far as blocking courses along the way, how long chains can be, and things like that. There are some courses or programs, usually in the sciences, that they are going to have a high complexity no matter what you do compared to some of your social sciences. And but a low complexity score, um, while you might go, that's great, that's much better than my biology or chemistry or engineering complexity because it's 200 points lower, it can still be difficult for a student because what they may have is every step of the way they have an unclear pathway. So that unclear pathway can lead to those same factors that Brandon brought up of additional credits or extended, time to degree because they've taken a path and then they realize a term or two later that they went down the wrong path. They sort of So then they have to back up to take a different course that allows them to get the type of degree they wanted, to which Brandon can share more info if needed. Sorry, there you go. Brandon, you ready?
Yeah, buddy. Thank you so much. Um, so I figured I would show you all the four metrics and just show you the actual tool because this is a really, again, cool way to look at your programs of study. So every circle is a course, and each time you see a line between two courses, I can like freeze that as, and everything else goes gray. These are your four metrics. Um, Centrality I'll get to when with a course that has it's got to have a road in and a road out, so it can't be the first course in a chain. But complexity is the sum of the blocking factor and the delay factor. So what's a blocking factor and delay? Blocking factor is how many courses are blocked by this course. And the delay factor is how many terms on the longest chain. So again, we got two terms on this long chain and one delay factor. But if we go over here to one of the longer chains, you can see that that number goes up, right? Blocking factor, four courses across five, right? So this is kind of how this works. This course is a little more central because it's got a road in and roads out. Centrality matters because usually after a highly central course is completed, students are much more likely to have access to a lot of coursework. And you can see here that once a student passes this course, they're able to hop into a handful of other courses. So it's important to be able to look at both of these things. Within the tool, a few other things worth listing. You can view these in lists, so you can basically sort by highest centrality or highest complexity to begin that conversation with faculty to say, okay, well, what is connected, and is it connected in the right order, and why are we doing this? So it can be really powerful. You can also go in and make changes. So you can actually move courses around and see how, perhaps if you've got a lot of high complexity in the first three terms, what would it mean to start one of these chains a little bit later to reduce some of the complexity? Because again, the higher the complexity is in each term, um, essentially the more potential roadblocks a student can face. So that's it in a nutshell. Building these takes typically about an hour. We've been doing a little bit of experimentation with automating the build of this, and we'd be happy to work with your teams to try to do that. It always requires some human input, but building a map like this typically takes 60 to 90 minutes the first time you go through it, and that's building straight out of your course catalog. So anyone with access to the catalog can do it. Any questions? Because I know that's a lot. Before we just jump back into the slides. Okay. So another version of this that we do is a gateway factor. So traditionally, curricular analytics is studying a single program of study, essentially the pathways within a single program of study. This takes a single course and maps it across multiple programs of study. And your teams can have access to do this work as part of the curricular analytics that goes on for the entire year. And so some of the folks in this work this fall will be mapping gateway courses like algebra and intro to biology and some of these other courses that might be blocking 90 or 150 courses at your institution, and start to work backwards to try to understand how learning is scaffolded, how we're supporting students along these really complex chains of learning within programs of study. So again, this is open to you, and there's even a version of this where you can compare pathways for transfer and non-transfer students. So lots of opportunity. So how has this played out with our institutional partners? Here's just a few examples. I've forgotten how many institutions have done this work at this point, but we're probably getting well over 100 at this juncture. Sometimes it's engineering and STEM, but we also have, I love this first example is from 2D 3D art. Essentially, what they found was they had what we dubbed legacy prereqs that made sense in the past, but that as the faculty engaged, they realized with very modest changes, they can either reduce or reimagine some of the curricular structures. So this institution did that for both 2D and 3D. They revised the prerequisites across the board. They submitted to their um, state board of regents and essentially updated some early coursework so that they could ensure that students weren't repeating coursework at the upper levels. So they did all of that in the course of about 8 weeks. And by the end of the term, they were already, they had their permission from the Oklahoma Board of Regents. So it was pretty cool. Engineering, very frequently we see these problems of practice with low completion or persistence rates. Um, and in this program in particular, they had a number of student populations that they knew they weren't supporting well. And so they designed some new advising tools to help students have a better sense of how their courses should structure, and what the curricular complexity looked like. So being really transparent about that on the front end and saying, here are the supports within courses. They also moved some courses around because they realized that within their program, they were having students travel, typically by car between between different campuses within the same term, and they somehow they had missed that. And then additionally, they worked with tutors and other folks to really make sure that both the faculty, the tutors, and the students understood what that network of support looked like in that program. Biology, this one was really powerful in that they realized they were making some mistakes in the way they were advising students, that the advisors and the actual program of study were out of alignment. And so they actually did some course resequencing. They applied what they learned in one major across multiple majors, removed prereqs, and again, linked to academic support. You're going to see some themes here. There's some real themes related to advising, academic support, course redesign. Um, but we've also seen this used campus wide. That's the last example where we're looking at things like gen eds, where we're looking at things like program combination, like consolidation, where we're even looking at creating new majors. So that's the kind of work that's been done, and these are just a handful of examples. We've had just about every major you can think of put through this process at this point. So like I mentioned, the use cases, looking at programs, that's traditional curricular analytics. The transfer version, where we see that typically transfer students face real complexity right after they transfer into a 4-year institution. We can help you with that mapping if you're interested, whether you're 2-year or 4-year. If you've got programs where you're sending a lot of students. And then finally, this gateway course version. So all three of these are available to institutions who sign up, and we're happy to train your faculty so that they can go through this and essentially make wise decisions about how they spend their energy, and where they might support students differently. So I think I'm going to pass this to, I think this is Katie, or is this still me, Katie? I apologize. This is still me. One more. Um, but so we've talked a little bit about this, and I think it's worth pointing out that, at least 5 people typically make up a team. You can send more, and we recommend that you do so. The meetings that we have virtually online during that 7-week period, they tend to be between 60 and 90 minutes long. And then we recommend that your teams work between meetings, either with our team for technical assistance, like Rob mentioned, or on their own, or both. And typically, we invite you to pull people from academic affairs, admissions. Sometimes we can bust myths within programs as well and help the admissions folks have a better understanding of what students are getting into. DEI staff, institutional research staff, faculty leaders, retention specialists, reaccreditation teams, um, and even involving students. Sometimes it can be really good to pull in some students and have some discussions with them about the curricular pathways, to make sure everybody's on the same page. So these are just a few ideas, but typically you've got a leader on your team and some faculty, and maybe a few staff who are involved who really want to dig into the curriculum and imagine improvement. All right, Katie, I think it's you.
So
Oh, go ahead, Bo.
before Katie, I just want to jump right in. Along with the visualization tool, there is also, we have a few different inquiry guides to help you look at this tool, sort of analyze the visualization of it, and then start asking questions using the inquiry guide about how can we drive improvement, how can we design a plan, what metrics are we going to use, what's the timing, and all of those things. So it isn't um, it isn't just dependent upon who's involved, but there's also a guide to help you get through this process.
That's right. All right. Katie, my friend.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Rob. So people always want to know, how do we join? What is the fees involved? So for institutions who are not part of our transformation process, and I don't know that there's any transformation schools on here. If you are a transformation school, it's included in the fees you've already paid us. If you're not, the fees are listed here. They are based on your undergraduate enrollment, and we use College Navigator to determine what that is. The fees can be split into 2 fiscal years to help make that investment a little bit easier. We have a list here of the 7 dates that we will be having the synchronous meetings. Those meetings are all recorded. If everyone from your team is not able to attend, they will have the recording to refer to. The application is 4 questions, and none of them are more than 250 words. We're not looking to evaluate you to determine whether you should get into the academy or the community of practice. It's really just to make sure that your goals in joining the academy, community of practice, are what you're going to obtain by participating. So it's really just a fit check to make sure that we're all on the same page and it's a good fit for you. So, and part of the reason we do that is because, as you can see here, we have a very long list of different academies, processes, communities of practice that institutions join in order to have improvements in student success, in order to transform student success at their institutions. I am not going to read these, nor am I going to go through each one of these. They are all available on our website. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about any of these. You can always email me at lock@gardnerinstitute.org or just email info@gardnerinstitute.org. Both of those will come to me and I will happily answer your question, or if I am not familiar, I will get you in touch with the person who best can answer your question. We do like to mention, if you're not ready to invest in a full year yet, you want to learn a little bit more, this will be one of the tracks we're having at the Symposium on Transforming the Post-Secondary Experience. That is our annual conference. It's happening in October and November in Chicago. So what the symposium is it's part workshop, part conference. So there is about half of it you would be in a workshop with, I believe, both of these 2 gentlemen. Will be, oh no, Brandon will be facilitating it. Rob will not. He will be in another track. But so you'll have that opportunity to learn and more about the tools and have a little practice on them. And then the other half of the conference is concurrent sessions where you can learn from others who are using the tools. So one of the tracks in the symposium conference, I'm having a little brain moment, concurrent sessions, sorry, so is on curricular analytics, and we have what looks like some really great presentations for that. We do have 2 other conferences, or well, one other conference and one other workshop. We have the Graduate Student Experience Conference, which is happening right before the symposium, also in Chicago. And we have Transforming the Transfer Experience Workshop, which is in January, which is a 2-day workshop here in Asheville, North Carolina, for people who are interested in improving the transfer experience at their institution. So we would love to have you join us for one of those in-person events or bring a team. All of those are individual opportunities. This is a team opportunity and is all done virtually. So now I'm going to pass over to Brandon and Rob to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, we'd love if you're interested to please, either put stuff in the chat or feel free to unmute. We can hop back into the tool set. We can answer any questions you have. This is a high level overview of a, essentially a process where your faculty and staff can really dig into the current structures of curriculum and start to unpack those root causes, within those systems that might be inhibiting student success, and essentially make a plan for redesign in a very short period of time.
And if you want to ask your question live, you will have to raise your hand and we can
Hmm.
unmute you. Or well,
Autumn says, do you have a lot of experience mapping at community colleges across CTE and liberal arts programs? We do have quite a bit of community college mapping completed, and I'm not sure, Autumn, if they can give you permission to unmute so we can make sure that we talk through this. But one of the things that we find historically is that community college programs have fairly low complexity. So a lot of where there's conversation is about so if it's not the structure of the courses, where are we having student success issues, and then you can still do a lot of redesign, but the potency for the curricular analytics really happens when a community college cites, we're going to take these four programs and actually map them to the three institutions where we are sending the most students. And that can help us understand both where we're having flow issues as well as how we can best support when the students are going to hit that curricular complexity after they transfer. And a lot of times the four-year institutions are thrilled to talk about it because they've never thought about this either.
Yeah, I know. I used to work for the College of Business at Iowa State, so I noticed your business accounting math right away.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, like the transfer success situation definitely makes a lot of sense, especially in our liberal arts areas, though also in our career and technical. I think I'm really interested in this in so much as it might illuminate, again, how courses function I'm interested in how instruction actually impacts outcome. And when you illuminate the curriculum in that particular way, which I have been doing in manual ways with faculty, so like this idea of this being automated and responsive appeals to me, but I think that that's where it's interesting because like in my perspective, the student success um, like impact, it very much has to do with instruction. It's not the only factor, but it has to do with instruction. And so if you can get faculty talking about where they're going to make instructional interventions based on what's been illuminated to them in their curriculum, that makes my job easier.
Mm-hmm.
And impacts those, retention and graduation and those kinds of things too. So anyways, that's what I was just wondering about because you had used a four-year example. I just wanted to make sure that this has been attempted.
Oh, yes.
Community colleges, and that was what I had.
Thanks, Autumn, and thanks also for just having a little chat with us about some of the ways that this can be used because you're exactly right. It so frequently we have these high bottleneck courses, and the things that are within our locus of control are things like pedagogy and practice, right? How we're teaching, what are we doing in these actual courses? And so just getting faculty together to talk about that and to identify potential change ideas, that's part of the magic of this. And then building that plan of action at the end that someone like you can help them execute and have some accountability around, that's where the magic happens.
And the other piece that sort of brings that as a magical moment is the community that this brings together. So it isn't Brandon, who's a theater major, or me, who's an econ or an IT guy, talking to somebody else outside of those disciplines, but it's somebody in a similar discipline talking to somebody at your institution in their discipline. So like minds sharing ideas on how to make this better.
Mhm.
That drives things forward instead of oftentimes if it's a non-disciplined person talking to somebody in another discipline, the stop sign comes up and it says, you don't know what I'm talking about. But because we get like-minded folks together, similar disciplines, there's better conversations. They're amazing conversations.
And I'm not sure who was it. Are you both at Des Moines? Yeah, this question about the gen ed assessment is interesting because while the maps don't necessarily always indicate the complexity of gen ed, if you have some supplement documentation um, to show sort of how many courses can fulfill that gen ed, that's where the magic happens there is showing them that it's not so much structural complexity in the sense that it's prerequisite relationships, it's structural complexity related to the actual design of our almost endless combinations of potential gen eds.
Yeah, that unclear pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another question, Autumn had, do these maps only live in the platform or can they be exported?
Right,
Yep. Go ahead, buddy.
right now, because some of these are rather complex, and like you could see, I think in one of Brandon's, they're bigger than a page.
Yeah.
They are not currently exportable as an image. We just say take a screenshot, and we don't have a way to make exports dynamic, so you wouldn't be able to um, have that same sort of what if.
Yep. You
Like,
got to be in the platform to sort of move things around, but pictures are easy to take out. And we frequently have had institutions basically capture screen grabs and put them into a Word document or a PDF. Um, and a number of our
there,
institutions
there,
use this as, go ahead, Rob.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say a number of our institutions are using this right now for, 5-year program assessment and things like that as just part of business as usual to try to understand what is the baseline related to complexity? How is that impacting those lagging measures of student success like retention, grad rates? Um, do we have issues with high rates of Ds, failures, withdrawals, incompletes in some of these high bottleneck courses? How is that impacting students' ability to actually take the courses within the major? Those are the kinds of questions that are built into that inquiry guide Rob was mentioning, and that it's good to come back to with some frequency because it will essentially help you know exactly where you're having challenges in your program of study. It moves beyond the theoretical, like there might be an issue in the second year, and it can become very specific and say, yeah, these 3 or 4 courses that we're offering in the second year all block the next course in sequence. So that's part of the challenge students are facing. I mean, that's pretty powerful. Oh, can you voice over a little more about that comment, Autumn? I'm sorry to keep asking you to unmute.
Sorry, I didn't know I could still unmute. Do you mean my last comment about
Yeah,
change?
the one about the unintended consequences is what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like, it's my observation that, and this is in conjunction with our accreditation liaison here at DMAC, is that when a program is struggling with its student success outcome metrics,
Hmm.
they will make curricular changes in an attempt to um, impact those outcomes, which are sometimes successful, sometimes not. Obviously, it depends on all the stuff you all are talking about, how informed those curricular changes are.
Hmm.
I also just notice is that like if you continue to make curriculum, I have this hunch, and that's all it is, which is this spidey sense that there is a right sizing to curricular innovation that leads to improved outcomes. And so I think like I like how you can, drag boxes around in that inner activity that you have. I think that that's really cool and could, again, elicit a lot of discussion, which is where the special sauce is, to keep adding to our metaphors. But I think that there's a right sizing to that, or there's a pausing point. Where again, an unintentional consequence is that nobody knows the curriculum anymore. There's been so many changes and new options, and while options can seem good or innovation can seem good, depending on the climate, like, does anybody know what we're doing anymore? Like across that system of human capital that actually helps move students through these curriculum, can any of them advise on like, this is why you're taking it in this order, with this reason, with this prereq, with not, like, like, does career services know why you were doing that? Does it admissions and like recruitment and marketing know? Does institutional research know anymore why we're doing it that way? So that's what I was wondering about.
Literally, what you're describing is what is unpacked in the process, Autumn. So we would do some exercises and build a systems visualization. That's the second deliverable in the process, to say admissions, and it actually would have 3 to 5 bars on there that say these are the challenges we're facing. Like admissions doesn't know what's going on here, and we don't even know which gen eds match for this anymore, and we need some advisor training. So those are the kinds of packets of work that typically get rolled into that plan at the end, where people say, I will take responsibility for getting a committee together to talk about advisor training. I will work, so those kinds of things come out, even with metrics associated with them. Like if we're going to take all this work and do advisor training, how would we know it would be successful? Like those kind of criteria are built into those plans at the end. Other questions, other thoughts? Well, we know that this is just dipping your toe. We're just going to keep mixing metaphors, dipping your toe into the world of curricular analytics today. But know that we're happy to hop on any time and really dig into the platform, really dig into the larger process. Um, but it can be a really powerful way to illuminate things that have been hidden, um, and get your faculty talking, get different folks across campus talking, and really have a set of 4 or 5 tools that you can just bring into a meeting and people can understand very quickly, because it's typically a graphic visualization of things that are typically highly complex. So.
And I'll just add that we will send the recording along with the deck and the link to the article that was mentioned at the beginning of this. We do have 2 more information sessions that you can sign up for. They will be the same, but if you have other team members who want to join, or if you want to listen again, you're more than welcome to, and we'll include links to those in the email we send tomorrow.
Happy to stick around if anybody wants us to, but otherwise, just thanks for spending a few minutes with us today. We really appreciate it.
And I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, and as Brandon said, we'll stick around for anyone to ask any other questions.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.